If it's Wednesday, the primary politics of pending indictments. Why the former president has turned his campaign for the Republican nomination into a campaign against the Manhattan District Attorney. Plus, the Federal Reserve raises interest rates yet again, while warning of the potential for economic fallout as it battles a two-headed monster of rising inflation and recent bank failures. And the Biden administration's rare public rebuke of Israel as it calls the Israeli ambassador to the State Department over settlements and their expansion in the West Bank, amid growing frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu's far-right government. Happy Wednesday and welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Chuck Todd reporting from Washington. We're going to begin today with the biggest obstacle Donald Trump is facing right now to secure his third consecutive Republican presidential nomination. I'm not talking about his Republican rivals, potential or announced, like Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, or Tim Scott, because they've all now rallied around him, at least in the moment. Instead, from Donald Trump's vantage point right now, the biggest obstacles facing his path to the nomination are criminal investigations. 3 of them, to be specific, in New York City, in Georgia, and in the special counsel's office. Those probes might just effectively wind up being his versions of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. Survive them all, and the nomination is his. The party has all but reacted that way. As a Manhattan grand jury weighs potential charges against Mr. Trump tied to hush money payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, 2 sources tell NBC that the DA told the grand jury to stay home today, but to be on standby for a possible convening tomorrow. In the special counsel's criminal investigation into Trump's mishandling of classified material and the January 6th insurrection, remember he's looking at both, NBC News can confirm that a federal judge has determined that prosecutors have presented sufficient evidence to establish that Trump committed a crime through his attorneys and that one of his lawyers now has to testify before the grand jury. He cannot hide behind attorney-client privilege. The former president is facing a criminal investigation in Georgia as well. That is a look into his effort to overturn the 2020 election in the Peach State. His lawyers are looking to quash the special grand jury report and try to bar the Fulton County DA from continuing its case. It's kind of a long shot maneuver for what it's worth. And despite all of that, every single one of Trump's so-called rivals inside the GOP who have spoken out are not attacking him. They're defending him and instead attacking the Manhattan District Attorney. Take a listen.
He's the guy that wants no jails. The only thing he wants to do is weaponize the law against his political enemies. President Trump is a victim of that.
From everything I've seen from this New York district attorney is that this would be something he'd be doing for political points.
The fact that the Manhattan DA thinks that indicting President Trump is his top priority, I think, just tells you everything you need to know about the radical left in this country. It just feels like a politically charged prosecution here.
You have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments. You know, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda and weaponizing the office.
It's hard to call that group of Republicans challengers to Trump given those kinds of comments. All of them seem to give a pass to him actually breaking the law. None of them condemned him for breaking the law, for putting himself in a position for a district attorney in any jurisdiction to have enough evidence to indict him for a crime. Remember, Donald Trump's behavior put him in the situation. Not one of them condemned his behavior. Not one. And that perhaps explains why Trump's campaign has looked less like a traditional campaign and more like an operation designed to protect him from legal scrutiny. His early campaign announcement let him deflect any legal action against him as campaign interference by what he and allies are calling partisan prosecutors. And by preemptively proclaiming that an indictment was coming in Manhattan, he got the entire Republican Party apparatus to fall into a familiar pattern of defending him before they even know what the exact charges are. Folks, at the moment, there is no force inside the GOP that appears to have the will or ability to deny the 2024 presidential nomination to Donald Trump. There's none. The only thing that's going to keep him off the ballot is going to be the legal system. And ironically, every one of those Republican potential foes of his in the primary are all rooting for the legal system to work in their favor. Garrett Hake is following the grand jury proceedings in Manhattan for us. Ken Delaney has some new developments on the special counsel investigation. And joining us, at least on this show for the first time, is former presidential candidate and governor of Ohio, John Kasich. He's also a newly minted NBC News political analyst. He knows a thing or two about running against a guy named Donald Trump in a primary. But let me start with Garrett, who's outside that Manhattan courthouse. So, Garrett, let's start with the non-news of today. You know, we're only on, I guess, this watch in some ways because Donald Trump thought something was going to happen this week.
Well, that's partially true, Chuck. I mean, we had some reporting late last week that the grand jury was getting close to making a decision. But yes, it was Donald Trump over the weekend who pointed at Tuesday, circled it on his calendar and then all of ours as the day that he thought he would be indicted. That never made quite a lot of sense given what we know about the grand jury's schedule. Today, Wednesday, their second meeting of the week, when we didn't know of any witnesses scheduled to appear, did seem like it had potential to be the day, but not so. As you pointed out, the prosecutors told the grand jury to go home today or to not come in. They're on standby for tomorrow. No one knows exactly why, although Robert Costello, the witness put forward by Donald Trump's attorneys on Monday before the grand jury, has a theory. His theory is Robert Costello. He thinks his testimony was so compelling and so effective at undermining Michael Cohen's credibility that the grand jury had to take a break. The DA had to take a break and kind of figure out how to proceed with their case, whether that involves calling another witness or coming up with additional evidence to bolster Cohen is unknown, but apparently the DA doesn't think Cohen is the answer to this. He was on standby himself on Monday to rebut Costello, but wasn't used. So now we're in this holding pattern here to see whether the grand jury does indeed convene tomorrow and whether it might take more evidence, another witness, to convince them to provide the indictment that the prosecutor seems to be pursuing here.
Do we know how long, Garrett, this grand jury has been impaneled for? Is there, when is their expiration date?
I do not know what the expiration date is, Chuck, but again, based on everything we know about how they've been operating, we've been under the assumption they're at the end of the probe. I think the most important data point on that is the idea that Costello, a witness brought forward by Trump's attorneys, was allowed to testify at all. And it's not the same in every state, but in New York, you know, the target of a grand jury investigation has the opportunity either to testify himself or herself or provide another witness. That tends to come near the end of these processes.
Curious, have you seen any evidence of protesters or enhanced security?
Enhanced security, yes, Chuck, but of protests, not a peep today. Even the ones that were sort of scheduled and planned, announced and promoted on social media the last 2 days fizzled pretty quickly. Doesn't appear there's any juice behind the idea of some kind of massive turnout in Donald Trump's defense, at least not until there's something to defend him from.
Garrett Hake on the ground for us outside the Manhattan courthouse. Garrett, thank you. Let me move over to Ken Delaney, and he's got an update. Again, you got to keep track of all your investigations into Donald Trump. This is one part of the special counsel's investigation. He's doing both the January 6th investigation and the classified documents, and this is an update of the classified documents part of this. So, Ken, a win for the Justice Department, and what does it mean going forward for this lawyer having to testify?
It's a big deal, Chuck. This goes to the obstruction of justice issue in this classified documents probe, the question of whether Donald Trump obstructed justice, misled the Justice Department. On Friday night, we've learned a federal judge ruled that the Justice Department had established that there was evidence to believe that Donald Trump committed a crime through his attorneys, and that therefore the crime fraud exemption in the attorney-client privilege could be invoked, and she ordered that Trump attorney Evan Corcoran testify before the grand jury and provide documents. Now, the Trump team appealed that ruling, and in the docket that we believe corresponds to this, now again, this is all sealed, it's all secret, so we're not seeing the names on the docket, but in the docket that we've been tracking, it appears to show that the appeals court ruled in the Justice Department's favor.
Pretty quick.
We can't say that for sure. Pretty quick indeed.
Yeah.
They were on an accelerated schedule. They had asked the Justice Department to file a response by 6 a.m. today. So now, I'm not here saying this for sure because no one has pointed us to this docket and said this is the one, but it's widely perceived to be corresponding to this case. We're doing some more reporting to try to confirm that. But either way, this ruling by Judge Burl Howell is deeply significant because it shows that she ruled that the Justice Department showed that Donald Trump through his attorneys, committed crimes. Now, here, let me tell you what I think that means. This goes to the issue of this assertion that a lawyer for Trump named Christina Bobb made to the Justice Department back in June that they had looked for all the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and that they had found none. They had turned over everything they had. 3 months later, the FBI searches the place, learns that no, in fact, there were 100 additional classified documents, including some in Donald Trump's office. The question always has been, did Donald Trump's lawyers lie to the Justice Department, or did Donald Trump lie to his lawyers, or is there a third possibility they somehow didn't know the documents were there? Well, this appears to suggest that the Justice Department believes that Trump, and can prove that Trump lied to his lawyers. Now, it's one thing to establish this before a federal judge in a preponderance of the evidence standard. This is not beyond a reasonable doubt that they're going to need in a court of law, but it's a significant step in their efforts to show that not only did Donald Trump have improperly hold classified documents, but that he misled the Justice Department and appeared to have obstructed justice.
So who's got more legal exposure here, the two lawyers or Donald Trump? And on this specific issue of lying about the return of classified documents, if the lawyers are the ones that signed it on Donald Trump's behalf, are they, which is sort of like welcome to Michael Cohen's world, right, where the lawyers get prosecuted for Donald Trump's intended misconduct?
But this suggests that they are trying to get Evan Corcoran's testimony because they believe that he's going to testify that he just was asserting what he was told by his client. And I should add that Evan Corcoran, it's been reported that Evan Corcoran instructed Christina Bobb to draft this affidavit. And what we believe, what we are told the judge has ruled is that the evidence is that Donald Trump committed crimes through his attorneys, and that they need the testimony of the attorneys to further establish that.
Ken Delaney with the latest, which is a complicated thing sometimes. It's a lot of explanation. We don't have a lot of the sourcing that we can show you because of the way the justice system works. Ken, terrific reporting. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chuck.
So to try to understand why Donald Trump's political opponents are supporting him in this moment, rather than maybe either staying silent or moving aside or maybe even helping to pile on, is I'm bringing in John Kasich. He's a new NBC News political analyst, but he's a longtime friend and that I've known and covered a long time to this program. And so it's good to see you. Welcome to the NBC family.
Thanks, Chuck. You know, I used to say if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. Now it's every day.
Correct.
Yeah, it's every day.
If the day ends in Y, it's Meet the Press, brother. So let me start with trying to explain that mashup of candidates that I played earlier, where every one of them, some of whom are off the record, will be very critical of the president. When cameras on, will be very critical with the president, are standing by him on this. Explain.
Well, Chuck, I imagine that they all kind of gathered with their political people to say, what do we do? And look, we cannot dismiss the fact that Trump received 70 million votes in the last presidential election. And his people are, they're in many respects, they're really, really rabid. And, I saw when he went to East Palestine in Ohio, he was greeted enthusiastically. You all covered his trip to Iowa. You saw that there was a lot of passion for him. Chuck, I'm not so sure it's for him, though. I think it's that he represents a voice of many Americans who think, that they haven't been played with fair, the system's been rigged or whatever. And I think he represents a voice, but yet nevertheless they're there. So I think these candidates, what they're trying to do is really kind of have it both ways. At some point be independent of Trump, but at this point they don't want to aggravate his fervent supporters. And Chuck, life's short. I don't know how long Meet the Press has been on, how many people have been on there who are no longer alive. And yet at the moment, they thought everything was critical. The only critical thing, in my opinion, frankly, in life and in politics, is what principles are you going to stand on? So, I don't know why they're saying anything, to be honest with you. And no one should ever, be excited that somebody else is in deep trouble. Just let it play out. Right. But here they are kind of attacking this prosecutor. And what bothers me about that, Chuck, is where does it stop? Does that mean now that the Democrats can attack the Republican prosecutor in the future or attack some member of the U.S. Supreme Court? I mean, why don't everybody just be quiet and start talking about your policies of hope, not your policies of division?
This is what you're sort of saying what I thought at least one person might say in this field, which is no matter what you think, you may not have wanted to vote for Alvin Bragg as the Manhattan prosecutor. That may have, but at the end of the day, most prosecutors are elected officials in this country. We've made that decision. We can have a debate about whether that should be the case, but we've made that decision. If you decide to discredit one, you're discrediting, if you're saying that because they got elected, therefore everything they do is through a political prism, if we go down that road, Governor Kasich, where does it, as you said, where does it end,
Chuck,
and what do we turn into?
Look, I mean, the judiciary, look, we see what's happening in Israel, right, with the fact that Netanyahu's trying to figure out a way to limit the power of the judiciary. And you can see the outrage being expressed in Israel, and also what you're seeing from Joe Biden with his call with Netanyahu saying, you better not do this. Politicizing the judiciary or shortening or shortcutting their ability to make decisions is, I think it's a really serious problem for our country. Look, I don't think anybody's happy with the way in which we picked the Supreme Court now, and we kind of know the results of most of these cases before they even render an opinion.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, and what's dangerous about you and I on television is we can go off on tangents, and we can go off in places that the producers can't go. But I'm glad you brought up the Supreme Court, because I'm watching this nonsense in Wisconsin, where they elect their Supreme Court. They basically cut out the middleman. No, we'll let the voters do it. I never thought our system could get worse at picking Supreme Court justices. Wisconsin says, hold my beer, because their system's even worse.
Yeah, I like the current system. We just have to figure out in which we can have a more effective way of selecting people who the American people are going to say they're fair-minded. But you're right. You and I can go all kinds of directions. But here's the thing that's troubling when you see this Republican retreat that's going on in, I guess it's still going on in Florida. You know, I used to go to those, Chuck, and those were it's like going and getting a root canal. Because I was budget chairman trying to put something together. And instead of them down there trying to deliver a message of what they believe in, whether it's prescription drugs, what they're going to do about the budget, any of these issues, what they're doing about immigration, they're all caught up in this thing about Donald Trump and bashing the prosecutor. So they're stepping on their own ability to deliver a message that might make sense to the American people. And instead, they look like they're just fumbling around down there. And it's just not a good thing that they're doing.
You know, it seems like the trap is there, Governor, which is, I understand what you were saying about each candidate has to, if you alienate Trump's base, you can't get the nomination. But the more you rally around Trump, the more you alienate the middle. You can't do both, can you?
Well, I think you got to stand on principle, Chuck. I mean, look, you know, one of the things that bothered me about running for president is how many of you guys counted me out before we even got to New Hampshire. Yeah. With a little bit more money and a couple breaks, I could have been the nominee. You know, I won Michigan, I won Ohio. If I had won Michigan, won Ohio. You know, what happens is the media, to a large degree, tries to decide who's going to be the nominee. And they're not always right. And always something can come out of the blue that you never expect, that can set somebody on fire, where all of a sudden the media says, well, wait a minute, look at that person. It is a long way from the nomination for Trump, DeSantis, or any of these other people. It's a long road, and it is a tough road, and you've got to be a weathered person, and you've got to be in good spirits, you've got to have money, you've got to have a message, you've got to connect, you've got to have some magic. And I'm not yet willing to say that Trump's the nominee or whoever is. Yeah. But what I am willing to say is, why isn't somebody standing out and saying, I'm not going to comment on that. I want to talk about the things I care about. You know, it doesn't make any sense, Chuck.
John Kasich, our newly minted NBC News political analyst. Good to see you. Like I said, welcome to this side of the street.
And we'll stay in the boundaries the next time. How's that?
No,
within the borders.
That's why we have you on. Thank you, John.
All right, Chuck.
You got it.
See ya.
Coming up. Facing turmoil in the banking industry and trying to fight inflation, the Fed just announced it's raising interest rates again. Did they meet the Goldilocks moment? What it means and how the markets are reacting next. Plus, as Republican leaders are mostly rallying to Trump's defense, the fight between Trump and his potential 2024 top rival Ron DeSantis is starting to heat up a bit. We'll explain ahead. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome Welcome back. For the 9th time since last March, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates in an effort to fight inflation. The central bank announced an increase of a 1/4 percentage point a short time ago with a statement that acknowledged uncertainty due to recent banking turmoil. In a press conference following the announcement, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, tried to reassure the public that all deposits in the banking system are, quote, safe. Markets, though, took a pretty sharp turn downward in the final hour of trading as the Dow fell more than 500 points following the Fed's move after pretty much treading water all day. Steve Leisman is CNBC's senior economics reporter. He joins me from the Fed. Also with me is David Beckworth, a former international economist for the Treasury Department. He's now a senior research fellow with the Mercatus Center and host of the Macro Musings podcast. Mr. Leisman, though, let me start with you. It seemed to me that Powell was trying to find a Goldilocks here, trying not to rattle the system, and at the same time tried to give banks some breathing room. Did he do it with his rhetoric or not?
I think so, Chuck. You're right. He's trying to thread the needle here between he's got an inflation problem on one hand that requires him to raise rates, and he has a banking problem on the other hand, and that's probably going to result in less inflation down the road. But how much and when, he doesn't know. So he took another stab at fighting inflation, raising by a 1/4, and then kind of played around with the language in the statement that said, you know what, we have maybe a little bit less to do than we told you last time in terms of raising rates here. So the market didn't like it at the end of the day. They kind of liked it for most of the time when he was talking.
I don't get it.
Look,
because he telegraphed that he's probably going to stop raising rates before the end of this calendar year.
Well, people wanted a hard stop. They wanted a definitive hard stop, whereas we're going to raise by 25 basis points or a 1/4 of a point, and then we're going to be done. That's not what he said. He said, we might be done, we might not be done. And frankly, he can't say because he doesn't know.
David Beckworth, what's your take on this? And did he find the sweet spot?
It's hard to know where to go. I would note, though, that Janet Yellen's statement today that the Treasury has not looked at fully ensuring all deposits may have contributed to some of this action we've seen in the markets. But I do think Powell has a tough job ahead. I mean, if you look at their forecast going forward, they're projecting by the end of this year, unemployment will go up to 4.5%. We're currently at 3.5%. It's hard to see how we get there without a recession. They also have inflation dropping to 3.3%. We're close to 5.5% with PCE. So the Fed is sending a very strong signal through its projections that we may go through some pain, but it's also trying to balance itself against the prospects of creating a more severe banking crisis.
Is an unemployment rate under 5% recessionary?
I think to get there, it would be fairly painful. Historically speaking, no, that's a relatively low number. But we're at 3.5%, and to get to 4.5%, how do you get there without shedding lots of jobs?
No, it's a fair point. And I guess, Steve, that's been a question. I mean, I saw a stat today. There's still 2 job openings for every one person looking for a job. Is it even possible to raise the unemployment rate that much in this short period of time?
Well, it's been a real surprise. This whole post-COVID period has been an amazing surprise in terms of how strong the job market has been. The idea that we've been able to bring down the unemployment rate to 3.4%. Now it's at 3.6%. And the inability of Fed policy to affect unemployment. And that, I think, Chuck, is because we're still in this post-COVID adjustment period. There's still leisure and hospitality. There's still, stadiums and rock concerts and restaurants that are out there looking for workers because they're just not available. So it may be the Goldilocks scenario, which you talked about at the top of this segment, is this. We get inflation down, and we have a modest but not really big increase in the unemployment rate. Powell said, it's going to be a little bit tougher now with this banking problem we have, but he didn't rule it out entirely.
David, what do you expect? What does Powell need to see in the next month to decide whether to keep raising rates or not?
I think the obvious answer would be inflation continuing to trend down. We've been coming down since middle of last year, but since then we've gone sideways, and I think it's important for the Fed to see continued progress on that front. Also, we need to see the economy, remain fairly stable, but at a minimum, you'd want to see lower inflation trending down.
So, would you be expecting another 1/4 point, or do you think he skips a month to see how that works in April?
I think he's keeping it open. It's on the table. I also found it interesting today that he noted that the tighter credit conditions effectively serve as a rate hike. He noted that, they didn't go to 50 basis points like they had talked, only went 25. But he noted in his speech, in the presser afterwards, that tight credit conditions is effectively doing some of the heavy lifting for them. And if that continues, that may be enough.
It's funny. I'm glad you brought that up, David. Steve Leisman, late last week, I had a former member of the Fed, a former governor there, a member of the Fed board, who said that's how he would have communicated this. He didn't want to see any increase. And he would have said, look, we would have increased, but what we're trying to do, tighten the money, tighten lending, is going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Powell definitely took a risk here. You look, I mean, small and regional banks, they are responsible for a good part of lending into the economy. When they tighten their credit standards, what does that mean? It means they give you a little more scrutiny about like how much of those assets worth at your collateral. They're going to charge you more for the loan. They're going to create more conditions in the loans. And so think about that small business dream you may have had. All of a sudden, you don't get over the bar that's needed to get that loan. You don't form that business. You don't hire that people that are going to work there. Or maybe you don't get that loan to expand because the bank's going to be a little tighter. So there's a risk here that he just made things more expensive, made things, in fact, a little tougher for the banks, for which the situation is already tough. So there's a risk that he did too much here today, and we're just have to wait and see what happens with the banking system, Chuck.
And David, very quickly on the international front, given what happened with Credit Suisse, any international contagion we should be worried about?
I don't think so. The Fed has facilities to deal with them. We actually saw last week they announced they're reopening the hours or extending the hours of their dollar swap lines. The Fed's been through this in 2008, 2020. I think they're prepared to handle any international contagion.
All right. Steve Leisman and David Beckworth, appreciate having you both, giving us some economic expertise on what is normally a very political hour. So thank you both. Up next, Donald Trump's grip on the GOP, what it means for the potential prosecution of the former president. Panel is next. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. As we mentioned, former President Trump's biggest obstacles to the GOP nomination may not be any primaries or caucuses, but the 3 criminal investigations he faces. Because despite his penchant for scandal and controversy, Republican voters still broadly hold a favorable view of the former president. A new Monmouth poll shows 71% still have a favorable opinion of Trump. The numbers are down from maybe their peak, but they're not collapsing. And it may also help explain why his opponents have been loath to attack him. Those are the same voters they still need to win the nomination if it's not him. Joining me now on set, NBC News Washington correspondent Michelle Sindor, former Michigan Democratic congressman and distinguished senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, Andy Levin, and president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership, Sarah Chamberlain. Yamish, I feel like I've said the one thing about Donald Trump is we like The Apprentice, we're always in reruns. And in some ways, I feel like we're in reruns here. It was just a different year, and you're like, the cast may have changed, kind of, but it's sort of the same thing. He's getting everybody to get fired up about his personal legal problems.
And when as soon as you said sort of that what the thing that we see with Donald Trump, I was thinking of the word consistent, because what you see is someone who is consistently making himself the victim and consistently holding this party and forcing them to defend him. I think it's really interesting when you see even someone like Ron DeSantis, who is wanting to repeat these salacious allegations at length, but also still wants to say, well, this could still be politically motivated. You have Mike Pence doing that. You have Tim Scott doing that. These are not people who want to spend their time defending former President Trump. But you also have the former president doing something else, which I think is really interesting. And that is making this not about only himself, but also saying, I'm standing in the way of between you and your political enemies. They're not just coming for me. They're coming for you, Republican voter. That to me is interesting because he's already sort of shifting this into a political argument for the people that he wants to back him.
You know, Sarah, it's interesting. And DeSantis got bullied into defending him.
He sure did.
Let's not forget that. I mean, the Trump campaign wanted all of us to know. I heard from them. I'd see every little thing. Where's Ron DeSantis? He hasn't said a word. And so he's like, all right, I'll defend you. Yeah. I'm going to do what you said, repeat the allegations, right. Snicker, snicker. But you're like, you defended him. And he bullied you into doing it.
He did. He bullies everybody into doing it. It's really fascinating to watch. I mean, it's.
Do you
I don't know
feel
when
as if
it's
the
gonna
party's
end.
held hostage by him? I mean, is that a fair way to describe it?
A little bit. I mean, our members, the Republican Main Street Partnership, we are the majority makers, so we support him, but we also want to move on and start talking about policy and solve some of the problems facing this country, like the bank crisis. I mean, there's a lot of problems, China, and we're focused on Donald Trump, and he's fine, but we need to focus on what the American people want us to.
Yeah. Andy, it almost feels as if the Republicans both want the legal system to take care of their Trump problem, but they're not going to give the legal system the space to breathe to take care of their Trump problem.
Right. You got to look out for tearing down district attorneys and tearing down officers of the law. I mean, we should just let the law follow the law. Donald Trump and anybody else is not above the law. These are allegations. We're following this grand jury every second, as if it's this kind of. That's not the way the legal system's supposed to work. Let's see if this district attorney has a case, not only about the hush money, but that it implicated election law. And if that's the case, that's very serious business.
But have we shifted off of that with your breaking news today? Is that why New York did not move forward?
But see, isn't this the problem, Sarah? And I say this, and I'm not trying to pick on. It's the fact that because of what he's introduced, the idea that, well, if I'm being prosecuted, it must be political. Mm-hmm. And then it enters up, well, they must be coordinating. Oh, Merrick Garland must be picking up the phone with Albert Bragg. And the fact is, if any of that were true, that would be insane, right?
Yeah, but. Okay, if we have
and
more
like
evidence,
I said, I understand where the logic goes because he's introduced it into the system. But my God, if it actually worked that way, wouldn't that be a problem?
It would be a problem, but it would also it's also a reasonable. I mean, are we really going to prosecute a former president for Stormy Daniels?
We impeached a sitting president for sex.
We did, but he stayed, and he became even more. But Clinton became even more popular after that.
Well, you're making
and that's going to be an issue here. So, but the breaking news today, is that really an issue? I mean, do these lawyers? I mean, did he make them lie for him? That's going to be a bigger problem than Stormy Daniels. People know about.
I don't disagree.
People know about Stormy Daniels. They still support him.
Well, the interesting thing to me about all of this is you even have Democrats who are looking at this, Democrats that I've been talking to and saying, is Stormy Daniels where we want to sort of have this argument?
The hill to die on?
Is this the hill to die on?
Yeah.
Is it not going to be the Fulton County DA and the fact that he was trying to steal an election and allegedly steal an election in Georgia? Is it going to be that he had this insurrection where people were physically killed in the Capitol? Why are not those the things that people are focusing on? That's the question I've been hearing from Democrats. That being said, because as you said, these DAs can't coordinate and say, well, because this crime isn't as big as your crime, I'm going to slow walk my case a little bit so that Georgia gets done first. That's not happening, but it's problematic on the political front because you even have Democrats who obviously don't like Donald Trump who are saying this case could muddy the waters and make it more popular.
But here's at least one Democrat who's willing to stand up and say, not only isn't the coordination happening, it shouldn't happen, it mustn't happen. He has these cases against him for what he did wrong in New York and Georgia and Florida, and they're all barreling forward. This judge in the D.C. Circuit, who until just now was the chief judge, she's unimpeachable. And now I guess the appeals court has backed her up. So that, this case about Georgia and this case about what he did wrong, it's not about having sex with a Stormy Daniels. It's about the hush money and the election law.
But Edwards,
and it's not. I'm not interested in picking which case goes when. I'm interested in respecting the law and saying this is America, and what America is about is that no one's above the law.
But I think this is a tough one because Edwards got off. And it was $1 million.
Every campaign finance one has gone. I mean, I will say that we've learned this with Bob McDonnell, with John Edwards, and these campaign finance cases. I agree. Because
they're tough.
We've written terrible laws. Let's be honest. The campaign finance laws are not good.
And the American people don't care if they even understand it. They don't care.
Yeah. In that sense, that's been difficult. But I go back to the rush the Republican Party has to basically follow Trump's lead here, and the unintended consequences. Yada, yada, yada. We've destroyed trust in all legal systems.
That to me
Hard
is
stop. This is the crisis.
That to me, I think you're right. That is the crisis, because you have every Republican now having to go on record to say, well, do you back this? And what do you think about this politically motivated prosecution? And they're falling in line. Maybe not on the Senate side. I've heard from our Capitol Hill reporters that there are some Republican senators who maybe are not running to the defense of Donald Trump, but they weren't going to run to the defense of Donald Trump on a number of things. But if you're a political candidate in the Republican Party, Ron DeSantis and the like, you're sort of seen as like, well, this is a litmus test. Are you for this group of people? Are you on this team or not?
Should we discredit every elected attorney general in this country, Sarah?
Absolutely not.
Right, but isn't that where we're headed?
Dangerously close to that.
Yeah,
I would say.
I mean, what is it about Alvin Bragg that's different than the other attorney, than his peers across the country? They're all elected. He seems to be highly qualified. He doesn't seem.
Well, I
to
think
be
in this case, look, Donald Trump's going to go after anybody that comes after him.
Exactly.
Whatever. That's the thing. I mean, I think that we know this. This is his MO. I guess the question I have is Sarah, it looks like the party's falling. The candidates running against him are falling into the same trap.
They are around the Stormy Daniels problem, because for what we just talked about, the Democrats have done it too, and they've walked. So that's why they're supporting him in this particular case. We'll wait and see what happens with January 6th.
But they did this with Mar-a-Lago. And then suddenly, when we heard more of the story,
exactly.
People claim
and that's my point. Stormy Daniels, they're gonna support him. I don't know what happens down the road.
You could also say that with January 6th and the questions around the election. I mean, you had a number of Republicans on January 6th, when I was standing on the lawn of the White House, running for the hills from Donald Trump, and then they fell back in line and said, actually, well, maybe he wasn't doing exactly what he said he was doing, and maybe it's okay to demand votes from Georgia officials. I mean, it's not just Stormy Daniels, and I think that to me is the remarkable thing. And the problem I think that the Republican Party has on its hands is whether or not they can continue to do this, or they're going to continue to be forced to do this, or can they turn a corner?
Here's the thing. The base may like this, but the middle hates the chaos.
They do. They
hate the chaos, and if it looks like you're part of the chaos, you're in trouble, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. Anyway.
So true.
Thank you, guys. Terrific panel.
Thank you.
Michelle Sindor, former Congressman Andy Levin, Sarah Chamberlain. Thank you all. We'll have more discussion, and I had more analysis of Trump's legal and political future, plus the legacy of the Iraq War and the Bush presidency. That was right now on today's episode of the Chuck Toddcast. Steve Hayes and Charlie Sykes were my guests on that one. Use the QR code at the bottom of your screen, and you can get it. So do it. Coming up, we're going to be checking in on Israel and the role the United States is trying to play in trying to get Netanyahu to back down on his judicial review. We're live in Israel with the latest. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. The Biden administration is trying to ramp up diplomatic pressure on Israel over moves by the country's far-right government. The State Department did a rare thing. They called in Israel's ambassador to the United States yesterday to officially protest changes to Israeli law that would allow new settlements in the West Bank. This wasn't a formal diplomatic summons, but it was a clear sign of Washington's growing frustration. Because think about what we've had over the last few weeks. This meeting followed a phone call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu on Sunday, where Biden expressed his concern on Israel's plan to overhaul its judicial system. Since that call, Netanyahu has softened his stance a bit on some of the changes, but remains steadfast in giving politicians more control over appointing judges. But that call came after direct contact from Tony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, you name it, with visits to Israel over the last few weeks. Raf Sanchez is in Jerusalem for us with the latest. So, Raf, how did the Netanyahu government handle this? Like I said, not a formal diplomatic rebuke, but basically one step from it.
One step from it. Chuck, you've interviewed Netanyahu before. You know he's a canny politician. He today has been trying to tread a pretty fine line between a very frustrated Biden administration and his own far-right base. So the line he took in response to this law passed by these changes to a law passed by the Israeli parliament, which allows once again for settlement building in the northern West Bank, is he has said that he approves of this change in the law. He's happy that his supporters did it in parliament, but at the same time, he is actually not committing to building new settlements in that area. That is unlikely to be enough for the Biden administration. They are very frustrated that Israel's parliament did this, partly, Chuck, because of something that happened 20 years ago. Ariel Ariel Sharon, the right-wing prime minister of Israel in the early 2000s, he was the one who pulled settlements out of this area in the northern West Bank, and he promised the Bush administration that settlements would not go back. And today you have the Biden administration basically accusing Israel of going back on its word. And on top of that, Chuck, we are heading into the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. This is a joyous time for Muslims around the world, including Palestinians here in Jerusalem's Old City. But it historically has also been a time of tension and a time of heightened violence in Israel, in the occupied West Bank. And as we've talked about before, we are right now seeing some of the worst violence in 20 years. And U.S. officials are concerned that this will only exacerbate the situation. Chuck.
All right, Raf Sanchez on the ground for us in Jerusalem. Raf, as always, thank you. Still to come, TikTok CEO prepares to testify on the Hill tomorrow as momentum in Washington builds to ban the massively popular app. I'm going to talk to a top senator helping to lead a charge to put a ban in place with legislation that's been backed by the White House. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. TikTok CEO is set to testify in front of Congress tomorrow. He's going to defend his company's data collection practices as lawmakers threaten a total ban on the Chinese-owned app over national security concerns. NBC News has learned that Shou Zichu, the CEO of TikTok, is planning to argue that his company is simply too big and too economically viable in this country to ban, after he took to the app yesterday to speak directly to the platform's 150 million American users. The White House has pushed TikTok's parent company ByteDance to divest from the app in the United States and has backed efforts by a bipartisan group of lawmakers to pass legislation that would give the administration the power to ban it in the United States if it does it. Joined now by one of the Democratic senators backing this bipartisan bill, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin. Senator Baldwin, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's lovely to join you.
Thank you. Let me start with the defense that TikTok CEO makes. Do you think it's a good enough reason to keep TikTok afloat simply because it's too big to ban?
Look, I think that users of TikTok, and we'll speak in a moment about the bill that we've introduced, which deals with far more technologies than just TikTok. But I think users need to know who has access to their data, their whereabouts, where it's stored. Is this going to be shared with competitors and adversaries in China? And I think people really need to know the risk of these technologies. And so the Restrict Act, which we introduced recently on a bipartisan basis in the Senate, sets up a framework in the Department of Commerce, but tapping into other agencies to really understand the threats and risks posed, not just by TikTok. That's today's concern. Tomorrow it'll be a new technology. Next week it'll be another one. And we need to be able to assess and then mitigate the risk and harm that could happen to Americans, especially when we don't know, because there's not transparency about where our data is going, whether people can engage in identity theft or surveillance. These should be concerns shared by every American. Is your concern greater with TikTok on the data collection front, or the fact that it might be an extraordinarily effective influence operation? I think I can see concerns on both sides. And, again, with future technology, it might be a greater concern about surveillance versus identity theft versus malign influence. So I think we need to be concerned on all fronts, and that individual consumers need to have information about the risks that these technologies pose, if any. But that's why we need to have a framework to evaluate that. Yeah, I've wondered if you simply put a warning label. When I went to the App Store, and if I put TikTok on my phone, would you be satisfied with a warning label that said, the Chinese government owns a piece of this company? Keep that in mind when you decide to download this. But this is America, and we're going to let you make your decisions. Yeah, so as you know, Congress is looking at a variety of pieces of legislation. One that's been offered that I'm not associated with would outright ban TikTok. This really provides information, but also tools to mitigate, up to and including banning a technology. But we're not there yet. And I think that, yeah, a warning label might not be sufficient, but I think if there was a widespread understanding that certain technology was being used to spy on you, there might be a great concern about installing that in your home,
right,
or using it in day-to-day activity.
Because the question I have is, does government ownership, a foreign government ownership, enough to make it a ban? So, for instance, you go down this line, the Saudi sovereign fund is a huge investor in Twitter. Should that be allowed? Telegram, I believe the Russian sovereign fund is a big investor in Telegram, right? What's the difference?
Yeah, so I think you got to break this down. Let me start just by focusing on the Chinese government. Because I represent a state that makes things. And I know that we have had our manufacturers and our workers on an unlevel playing field because the Chinese government can invest in their firms and manufacturers and industry and make it possible to produce products for far less. They can dump them and drive Wisconsin businesses out of business. So I look at Chinese investment in certain businesses as creating risks well beyond the ones that we've just been talking about, actually driving companies out of business and putting workers out of work. So I've looked at the involvement of the Chinese government as an investor in private business for a long, long time, and I've had various concerns over time. We have allies that may invest in certain businesses that don't cause me to be concerned about Wisconsin workers losing their jobs, et cetera. So I do think that's why the Restrict Act is so sensible, because it sets up a framework that you and I aren't making these snap judgments. Right. They are looking carefully, first of all, the transparency of where data is stored, who has access to it. Right. Are they potentially using our private information for identity theft or surveillance? Do they know our movements? All these sort of things that average Americans and consumers should know when they make a decision about downloading an app, purchasing a technology to keep us safe.
You know, the thing that's most concerning when I watch this situation, the more I've learned, I've spent time with TikTok's executives, is everything they're doing to try to make the case that they're protecting data of American users is actually more expensive than divesting. And the fact that they won't divest feels like they want to go the more expensive route. What would be better for their business would be divestment, and the fact that they won't do it, does that not concern you?
It does, and I would hope when we pass the Restrict Act and set up this framework in the Commerce Department that we're going to be scrutinizing all of these decisions and getting answers so that we're not in the dark when we purchase technologies, download apps, and subject our personal data to potential malign use.
Let me ask you this, because this is something the TikTok users say. Glad you're worried about the Chinese with my data, but what bill are you going to pass that makes sure Instagram doesn't abuse my data?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. And frankly, one of the interests I've had over a long haul is making sure that even the U.S. government has a lot of our data. What about hacks and breaches where that's gotten out? We need to be careful to safeguard our data, even when it's in U.S. hands, or whether that's private sector or government. These are critical issues in the 21st century.
They sure are. Well, I think we all want our Privacy Bill of Rights. We just got to figure out what's in them. Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democrat from Wisconsin, appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Before we go, I'd like to take a moment to remember and honor a beloved, longtime political journalist and friend of mine. Vaughn Ververs here at NBC News died this weekend. Vaughn was the top digital editor here at the NBC News Washington Bureau for more than a dozen years. He helped guide our digital politics coverage. He worked with our political unit on First Read and the Meet the Press blog. And he made a few appearances on the Daily Rundown back in the day. Vaughn got his start in politics as a deputy press secretary for Pat Buchanan's short-lived presidential campaign in 1992. He's worked at Politico, CBS, and was editor of The Hotline before coming here to NBC News. On a personal note, Vaughn and I weren't just colleagues. We've been friends for 30 years. We worked at The Hotline together back in the 90s. We started the same week at The Hotline. We go so far back that here we are on C-SPAN 15 years ago talking then about how far back we go together.
Testing out 16 years. It'll be 16 years in April that we first started working together.
Brian Burvers, we were looking at some old video of you back in 2001 during your Hotline days, and you spent over a decade there.
When Chuck and I started at the Hotline, there wasn't even an internet. We were sort of an internet.
We were the internet.
As our friends at today's version of The Hotline wrote, Vaughn's decades-long career has had a tremendous impact on how we report and analyze the news today. For those of us who knew and loved Vaughn, it was about a lot more than just his top-notch journalism chops or his keen political insight. Vaughn was a mentor to a slew of young journalists, folks that I didn't realize he was a mentor to. He's been a sounding board for colleagues. He was quick with a one-liner and equally quick with a kind word. But most of all, he was a devoted husband to his wife, Lisa, and a loving father to three incredible kids, Victoria, Cameron, and Vaughn Henry. Our thoughts are with them in what has been a very tough time. I'll be honest, this has been very hard. I'll be back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. NBC News Now coverage continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.